Hello everybody, I'm Hazel. Welcome back to my channel about ice cream. This is an ice cream I've really been looking forward to making. The theme of the week was take two. So basically take something that you've already done and try and improve on it or modify it, do something to it. Back about almost a year ago, I made chestnut ice cream, which was delicious, but rock solid and really grainy. It was, I think, only the second flavour I'd made. I think I went straight from plain to strawberry to chestnut. And nuts aren't easy to use. I actually find nuts harder to work out than I do things like fresh fruit, which seems to put most people off of ice creams. But I know things now that I didn't really understand so much about ice cream then. I think I've worked out a way that it will hopefully work. And even if it doesn't, it will still taste nice. It just might not be quite the right texture. Now, the tricky thing about the nut recipes that I use as my ice cream recipes, at no point do they strain them. I read all of these recipes multiple times and never once were the nuts strained out. So the nuts are in the final recipe. And that, I think, is where the difficulty comes from. I'm just going to get started with weighing. So you can go and find your own chestnuts. I do actually know where some chestnut trees are, but by the time I found them, there were no chestnuts to be found. So either they were the ones that don't produce nuts, which actually does happen a fair bit with chestnut trees, or I was a little bit too late, and I suspect it was more likely the latter. So this recipe, I'm going to be making 900 grams of this. It's easiest for adding the egg yolks if you make it in a multiple of 150. And this recipe uses 20% chestnuts, so 180 grams or thereabouts, because the chestnuts may not turn out to weigh exactly 180. Why is my scale not turning on? Because I only have one battery. Right, I thought I had this done. I thought I had every single item out this time, and now I've got to go in the drawer to find the second battery for my scales. I'm just going to move the tripod back a little bit. I can see it is in a cake pan. I lost the battery cover for these scales a long time ago. Let's go back forward. So if the battery falls out, they just don't turn on. Yes, right, so where were we? 180 grams of chestnuts, or thereabouts, because they may not weigh exactly 180. The recipe is not going to be ruined if you end up using 178 grams or 184 grams. Now this is a 200 gram bag, so it's going to be most of these. There you go, 183. Would I rather go over or under? The formulation probably works. It only leaves me with two. The formulation probably works better if I go under, but the flavour works better if I go over. So let's go over. Now, all of these recipes, I'm just going to put the scale there for a minute. All of the nut recipes, essentially, well, actually, they use a pestle and mortar and grind it all down. I'm not going to be using a pestle and mortar. The recipes were written by the head confectioners. They were not there personally pounding the nuts with a pestle and mortar. They had apprentices for that. I don't have an apprentice. I do have bad hands. But I also have a mini chopper. So let's use that. They essentially turn the nuts into a nut paste. You can, of course, buy nut pastes pre-prepared. That would possibly be easier. But I often get mixed up with other things as well. It's hard to find a nut paste which is purely nut. My worry with chestnuts in this is they're not really like a lot of other nuts. They're much more carby and proteiny than they are fatty. So chestnuts were used as a substitute for flour. Well, brown chestnuts, obviously, were used as a substitute for flour in a lot of places where wheat didn't grow very well. So I'm not sure how well they're going to go into a paste, but we'll see. I see they're going into bits more than they are a paste. I might end up fast forwarding through this. It's just going to be me pulsing chestnuts for a while. I do love the mini chopper. Right, see what I mean? It becomes more of a powder. In fact, I can pick that up and just sprinkle it. It feels horrid. It feels like sand. Ugh. There's a bit of kitchen paper there, it was. I wonder why now I've got a mirror in this. Remember my troubles? No, that was still shut. That's fine. So the recipe's actually included mixing the chestnut paste. You can't see me, but I'm putting air quotations around the word paste with the cream. Now, this is a wet and dry chopper, so it will do that. I'm not going to... Can I measure the cream directly into that? That's awkward. Yeah, because I can't get the chopper sitting well on the scales. Right, have I got another jug? Yes, I have. I'm going to measure the cream into a jug and then take what's in the jug into the mini chopper. I think this is going to go in the experimental playlist rather than the tutorial one. So, in spite of last week's revelation that you can use half cream and half milk in a custard, I'd already worked this out based on full creams. So we're going to use the classic mixture of the single and the double, not the single and double, single and the whipping cream. So the single cream takes up 20%. Remember, 900 grams of the recipe, so 880 grams of the single cream, which is the majority of this pot. So nearly 160 just there. 170. A gram over 180. That's pretty precise. And then it's 25% whipping cream. So that would give me 225. Which is actually more or less exactly the entire pot. It's not going to leave me much whipping cream left over. I can pour quite quickly for a while. 222, 228. I can probably live with that. That's fine. Maybe I shouldn't have poured quite as quickly. Now, is that all going to go in the mini chopper? I'm going to have to do this in bits. This is where I suspect it may have gone wrong the first time I did this, because I didn't have the mini chopper then. I had just a normal blender. That did not work very well. Let's just pour it in and see how much we can get in there. I think it'll be all right, actually. Maybe not. Maybe let's put that much in first. And then I can always come back in a minute. Just going to flick it back onto the slower setting. And then mix that in. You know what? I think I might ignore their advice and just sieve this at the end. Because I think no matter what I do, I am not going to get a nice, perfectly smooth paste. It's too bitty. Just try and get as much of the cream out as possible. Find the small spatula. I think I've overfilled the mini chopper. There might be some kitchen purists out there absolutely horrified watching this. It's fine, it will fit, more or less, apart from the bit that is going down the side. Again, I probably will fast forward through this part. I think that's probably as close to a smoothly blended paste as I'm ever going to get. Just try and bring some of that out. What does it taste like? Tastes like chestnuts. I quite like chestnuts. I don't know how well it went overseas, so I just need to have a drink here. Right, chestnuts and Christmas go hand in hand. If you go to sort of a Victorian Dickensian Christmas market, you're going to find a roast chestnut stall. Right. That is now there. Shall I put that into the saucepan yet? Yes, because then I can create myself a little bit more space here. If I had designed this kitchen to be filmed in, I wouldn't have designed it in the way it is. But I didn't actually design this kitchen at all. Right, that's not even pouring. Let's bring out the thick chestnut cream. And this is where the other place where I think it went wrong the first time I made this, and it's another thing that I have figured out a way, I believe, to fix. There are a lot of solids in this recipe and not many liquids, which is why it froze so hard. So I'm going to be borrowing a trick from the likes of chocolate ice cream and adding water. The original recipe did call for the use of orange blossom water or orange flower water, which you can still do. I did in the original version. I didn't dislike it, but orange flower water is quite a powerful taste. It takes away quite a bit from the taste of the chestnut, which is what I wanted to come through. This is an absolute mess. This is definitely not going in the tutorial playlist. It's made a really good cream though. Not really relevant to this, but I imagine if you were making something like a buttercream, the mini chopper could easily be the way to go for that. I think that's probably as much as I'm going to get off of there for now anyway. I need to wipe my hand. Just taste a bit more of the chestnut cream. It's really quite nice. I quite like the taste of chestnut. Which is why I do want this to work. So I get as much out of the mini chopper as possible. And I can scrape off the spatula and try and get as much off the blades of the mini chopper as possible. This has definitely worked a lot better than doing it with the blender. I didn't get anywhere near this texture with the blender. It was all quite lumpy still, but it was the best I could manage at the time. Right, mini chopper over there. Spatula scraped as best as I can. I'm actually not sure I can get anything really off of that. blade. So that's it. There's the chestnut cream. And as I said, so there's a little bit of water added to this. Not too much. I formulated it at 90%, not 90%, 10% water, 90 grams of this recipe. That's probably not even 90 grams. That's a bit better. So where's the scale? There's the scale. Try and get the chestnut cream actually in. So 90 grams of water. And then there's just the sugar and the eggs. I did intend to pre-crack the eggs. Honest answer, I forgot. So, zero that down. Now, the sugar in this recipe is 15%, so 135 grams of sugar. 115, 125, 135. And then 6 of the egg yolks. With my cups to go and put my egg whites in. I just need a cup or a glass. A glass would also be fine. Right, there's... Okay, didn't realise there's corn in that one. There's another cup or glass. That'll have to be a glass. So yeah, the egg yolks go in at 10%, but it works out as 1 egg yolk per 150 grams of total recipe. So if you make it in a multiple of 150, that just makes it easier to put your egg yolks in. Sometimes the white falls off really easily. Sometimes you've got to really work for it. I don't like it when you get the little bits stuck on it like that. Just come off. Don't really want that in the ice cream. Easier to do it out of that side of the shell though. There we are, that's better. So I've not made chestnut ice cream. I don't need those on the scales anymore. I've not made chestnut ice cream since the original back in January of, well, I was going to say January of last year, but it is still January of this year. January gone. But I have tried to make other nuts. None of the nut recipes say to strain it, which surprises me. I did try, because nuts are, they're a weird ingredient you'd leave in. So often if you leave in an ingredient, it gets fully incorporated. So you leave in the juice of strawberries, but you don't end up with lumps of juice of strawberry. It gets fully incorporated into the ice cream. Or you melt in chocolate, but you've melted in the chocolate. You've not just left lumps of chocolate. I suppose you sort of do, but not in the same way as a bit of a nut. But when I tried to make... Oh, I've lost the whole yolk there. Should be able to scoop out. There we go. But when I tried to make nut ice creams as an infusion, they didn't come through with enough flavour. So I think the nut has to be left in, and I hope this is at least on the right path to working out how to do that. The noise you just heard there was an eggshell dropping onto the floor. I think it... Oh, it cracks. That's quite a strange crack. that's 3 egg whites. Remember, I save them in 3s because then it's easier for the making of macaroons with them. Eggs really do look disgusting. I'm not sure who the first person was that looked at them and thought, yeah, I'll eat that. It's not going to be a person. Egg eaters existed in nature long before any form of human was around. Right, this one has split. I'll just put it in. Remember, a little bit of white in the ice cream is not the problem. You don't want to have any of the yolk in the white if you're planning on using it to whisk up. The presence of fat inhibits that. Try to get that little bit off there. I'd rather it went into the white liquid ice cream. Probably going to try and... It's going to be difficult to fish that out of the ice cream, but if I do end up sieving this, it will come out in that part. A little bit of a pain, the eggs this time. Sometimes they separate really nicely. That has not happened this time. A lot of them have been quite tricky to get out of the... to get the white away from the yolk. I don't know if that's to do with the age of them. I'm not sure. Maybe different hens produce slightly different formulation of egg. I don't know. That might be something that's worth looking into. More for interest than anything. By the time you've got the egg and you're trying to separate it, it doesn't really matter why it's not separating very well. Come on, split. Not split. Part. I'm thinking, should I try one of those? Some of the devices you can get to separate eggs, but I don't know if they necessarily help that. And now it just comes down to whisking. This might be a bit of a tricky one to whisk though, because obviously it's quite a thick mixture. No, didn't mean to turn the light off. I meant to turn the fan on. Oh, this is... It feels like an extremely wet cake batter. It's going to make a strange custard, this one. Right, it's starting to go a little bit. I think I don't care what their recipe says. I think I'm going to strain this before I actually make it into an ice cream. So the part of the problem is it was grainy as well, and I think that may have just been the bits of chestnut coming through. That is feeling a bit different now. That is actually starting to feel almost silky as I whisk it. I did debate whether I wanted to use full sugar or if I wanted to bring a bit of glucose into this. But it's already relatively low sugar, and that is true to the original recipe, whereas a lot of recipes, none of their recipes were very high in sugar, or 25% plus. This one wasn't. This one stopped at about 18%, even without making any modifications. So I think authentic is to not have this as sweet, but that also means because sugar is what helps to soften the ice cream, it helps to hold the water. That also means it's going to possibly be a bit less soft. So adding a bit of glucose would have made it even less sweet, but would have potentially helped make it softer. Because remember, glucose is a monosaccharide rather than a disaccharide. 1 unit of glucose can hold 2 units of, no, other way, 2 units of glucose can hold 4 units of water, whereas 2 units of, well, 2 units in a disaccharide, which would just make 1 molecule can hold. Do you know, there's a better way of describing this. I've made a bit of a hash of that. I'll put it up as a, maybe as a, just title card here. Right, that feels like it could be custardy. Yep, that's custardy. Whenever I do, I'm not going to strain it now. I'll just do that. And get that into the jug. I'm going to scrape it, not because it's scrambled, but just to make sure I get all the chestnut out. Because I do want this to have a really strong chestnut flavour. There we go. I've got to say, the little bit of it I just tasted off the spoon. I'll just turn that down because I don't want it to burn into my saucepan. The little bit of it I just tasted off of the spoon wasn't actually that grainy. I think what I'll do, I'm going to see how the mixture turns out after it's chilled and developed, and then decide what I'm going to do versus straining and not tomorrow. For now, let's find room in the fridge. Actually, there's a little bit of space in the door that I cleared last week for one of the custards. And I shall see you back tomorrow for certainly a good re-whisking of this one and potentially a straining before churning. It's almost time to churn the chestnut ice cream, and you will see in front of us a new piece of kitchen equipment, the blender. I thought long and hard over whether I was going to strain this or not, and I eventually came to the conclusion of I'm not going to strain it. At no point did any of the nut recipes get strained. However, I am going to do the poor man's version of homogenization, which is I'm going to put it through the blender. Sometimes that will do as a spatula. It's not the spatula I was looking for. I think the spatula I was looking for is currently in the dishwasher, which the tripod is in front of quite problematically. So we'll be using my second favourite spatula. I only have 2. And you might be able to hear the ice cream machine is churning away in the background. Not churning, chilling away in the background. Just pour all of that in there. And just give it a good blend, which will make the pieces of nut as small as it's possible to be. This is slightly concerning. Something smells like it's burning. Oh, that's slightly worrying. If my friend was here, he'd say, have I got a brain tumour? So oh, ow, ow, just stood on a cat bolt. That's actually the second time I've done that, which I think makes it even more stupid. Let's hope it doesn't bruise as much as the first time. That was extremely painful. I spent about a week not able to wear shoes. Right, this gets loud. And I think if that's not finely blended, I don't know what's going to be. So the nice thing about using the blender is I can just pour straight from this into the machine. That does look very, I don't think it's going to come out too well on the camera, but it does look quite thin, which is good. And just pour through. This is not the easiest thing I've ever poured from. That's about right. You don't want to fill ice cream machines fully because the mixture does expand a little bit with air that gets churned in. That looks about right. And I'm happy to say the burning smell has now gone as well. I don't know quite what that was. So I'll come back in a little bit and see how the chestnut ice cream comes out of the machine. I think it's basically there on churned by the time I found the last pot and lid. That looks like the lid. And got it all written up. I think it'll be time for that to come out of the machine. That did not take long to churn. About 20 minutes. When I just tasted a little bit of it to see how the texture was coming along, it's still going to have that graininess, I think, unless I do strain it. The graininess is, why can't I spell the word chestnut? The graininess is the bits of nut. The only way around that is to strain it, which is not authentic to how the recipe was written. So I think I'm just going to have to accept that that is a feature in my nut ice creams. I will make it a feature. So turn that off. I quite like it when it does that. I don't think you're necessarily meant to churn it to that point, but I think it's quite easy to then scoop the ice cream. I am going to sneeze. My apologies, I do not have nice, delicate sneezes. Some people do little pretty ones. Choo, choo, choo. Mine are not like that. My cats sometimes leave the room if I sneeze. Well, they'll generally put up with one. If I do two, they'll glare at me. Three, they're going. They're not hanging around while that nonsense goes on. Meanwhile, they'll sneeze 10 times in a row. And I'm just expected to put up with that. This makes it so much easier to scoop the ice cream. I do wonder if the slight burn is right. When I was pre-chilling the machine, I did hear a crack. I don't know if there's something trapped in the, like not the bowl itself, but the part of the machine that the bowl sits in. I think the texture of this is going to be better than the first time I made it, though. As I said, even if it's not, it's still delicious. It's just a bit more solid. So that will freeze. See what I mean? I misspelled. Well, I didn't misspell it. I just forgot to write the T. So that will chill, freeze overnight, and tomorrow or possibly the day after, I can taste the chestnut ice cream and see if my texture problems have been solved or if I've still got a bit of work to do. Well, it's a few days later than I expected to be eating this. Migraines are not nice. I would not recommend them as an experience. But I have the thrill of chestnut ice cream to look forward to. Was that just my dishwasher gurgling? Right, it's still really hard. I did have an idea on this in which I substituted some of the sugar with dextrose. I think that's what I'm going to try out next time. I still don't think I can class nuts as a complete success, but there's a flavour in that is really nice. And an ice cream that's a bit hard is not the end of the world. You can just let it melt. It'll be fine. So if you're eating proper gelato was the word I was trying to find. Migraines leave me a little bit confused on words. I sometimes have to search a bit more to find the ones I want. If you're eating a proper gelato, they're actually generally served a few degrees warmer. So a gelato would generally be served somewhere between 12 and minus 12 and minus 14 degrees. So there's no saying you can't just let this warm up a little bit. The texture, try a bit more. What I referred to as the grainy texture when I tried it just out of the ice cream machine has more or less gone away. There's obviously still a texture to it. It's got bits of ground up nut in it, but nowhere near as grainy as I remember the first version of this being, and not as grainy as it was when I tried it having just been churned. And as I said then, I think I'm just going to call it a feature. You have to accept we're not used to ice cream made from fresh ingredients. So even some of my good ice cream parlours, they're still flavoured with good quality extracts and pastes and that sort of thing. I think if you said to somebody, this is made with actual nuts, I took real chestnuts and ground them up and made this ice cream, there are going to be differences. And no, I think that's something that maybe should be celebrated a bit more rather than dismissed as, oh, this isn't what I'm used to, I don't like it. I want to experiment more with nuts, maybe with different nuts as well. But I think I'm on the right path, at least, with nut based ice creams. This tastes really nice. If I just gave this 5 minutes to soften, it would be absolutely fine on texture. So I'm generally going to class this one as a success, not the final version, but getting there and manageable. That doesn't sound like a good word to use for something I really quite like. It's good. I like this ice cream. I'm going to have a tiny bit more. See, it's already softening. I know my face probably doesn't give that away, but I've already got a much bigger scoop out of that than I was earlier. No, I can't talk. I am happy with chestnut ice cream. Next week is not actually ice cream. You'll see why when I put the video out. It's good. It's something I really quite enjoy doing, but it's not ice cream. It's only mildly ice cream adjacent. Even so, I hope you'll join me back next week for that.